He is a Russian journalist and philosopher. He died in St. Petersburg on February 9, 1881. He is one of the most famous writers and authors around the world. His novels contain a deep understanding of the human soul, provide an insightful analysis of the political, social, and spiritual condition of Russia in the 19th century, and deal with a variety of philosophical and religious themes. Dostoevsky began writing in his 20s, and his first novel, Poor People, was published in 1846 when he was 25 years old. His most famous works include The Brothers in Moscow on November 11, 1821, and Karamazov, Crime and Punishment, The Idiot, and Demons. His complete works include 11 long novels, 3 short novels, 17 short stories, and a number of other works and essays. Many critics considered him one of the greatest psychologists in world literature around the world. He is one of the founders of the existentialist doctrine, as his short novel The Cockroach Man is considered the first work in this direction. Dostoevsky was born in Moscow in 1821, and began his literary reading at an early age by reading fairy tales and legends by Russian and foreign writers. His mother died in 1837 when he died during the years 1873 to 1881. He faced financial difficulties after traveling to Western European countries and gambling. For a time, Fyodor had to beg for money, but he eventually became one of the greatest and most respected Russian writers, and his books were translated into more than 170 languages. He was influenced by a large number of writers and philosophers at that time, including Kierkegaard, Pushkin, Gogol, Augustine, Shakespeare, Dickens, Balzac, Lermontov, Hugo, Allan Poe, Plato, Cervantes, Herzen, Kant, Belinsky, Hegel, Schiller, Bakunin, and Sand, Hoffman, and Mickiewicz. His writings have been widely read both inside and outside his native Russia, and have influenced many Russian and non-Russian writers, including Jean-Paul Sartre, Friedrich Nietzsche, Anton Chekhov, and Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Its origin. Dostoevsky's parents were part of a noble, multi-ethnic and multi-religious Lithuanian family from the city of Pinsk, with roots dating back to the 16th century. His family included Christian members of the Russian Orthodox Church, the Roman Catholic Church, and the Eastern Catholic Church. His family, on his father's side, were clerics, while on his mother's side, they were merchants. His father, Michael, was expected to also become a priest, but he broke the family rule and ran away. In 1809, 20-year-old Mikhail Dostoevsky entered the Moscow Medical Surgical Academy. From there he was appointed to the Moscow Hospital, where he served as a military physician and, in 1818, became chief physician. In 1819 he married Maria Nechaeva. The following year, he took a job at the Mariinsky Hospital for the Poor. After the birth of his first 2 sons, Mikhail and Fyodor, he was promoted to university assistant, a title that brought him into the nobility and enabled him to buy a small estate in Daravoy, a town 150 kilometers from Moscow, where they would relax in the summer. Fyodor was the second son of his parents, and there were 7 other children: Mikhail, Varvara, Andrei, Lyubov, born and died in 1829, Vera, Nikolai, and Alexandra was 15 years old. At the same time he left school and entered the Military Engineering Institute. After graduating, he worked as an engineer and enjoyed a lavish lifestyle. He also translated books at that time as additional income. In the mid-1940s, he wrote his first novel, Poor People, which introduced him into the literary circles of St. Petersburg, where he lived. He was arrested in 1849 for belonging to the Petrushevsky League, a secret literary group that discussed banned books critical of Russia's ruling regime. He was sentenced to death, but the sentence was commuted in the final moments of its execution. He spent 4 years in hard labor, followed by 6 years of forced military service in exile. In later years, Dostoevsky worked as a journalist, publishing and editing in several literary magazines. These works are known as the Writer's Notes, a collected collection of his essays, 1835 to 1889. His childhood 1821 to 1835. Fyodor Dostoevsky was born on November 11, 1821 in Moscow, the second son of his parents. He grew up in the family home near the Mariinsky Hospital for the Poor, which was considered a poor, lower-class neighborhood on the outskirts of Moscow. While playing in the hospital garden, Dostoevsky was watching the suffering patients, who were considered the worst patients as they were from the lower class. Dostoevsky was exposed to literature from a young age. At the age of 3, he had read heroic epics, fairy tales, and legends, all of this through his nanny, Alina Frolovna, who greatly influenced him during his childhood. When he was 4, his mother taught him the Bible so he could learn to read and write. His parents introduced him to various types of literature, including Russian writers such as Karamzin, Pushkin, and Derzhavin. Gothic literature such as in Radcliffe, the romantic literature of the works of Schiller and Goethe, the heroic tales of Cervantes and Walter Scott, and Homer's epics. Dostoevsky mentioned that his parents were the main reason for his attachment to literature because of the bedtime stories they used to read to him. Some of his childhood experiences influenced his writings later. When he was 9 years old, a girl was raped by a drunk man. That incident stuck in his mind, and the topic of the man who assaults girls appeared in the Brothers Karamazov, The Devils, and other works. Although Dostoevsky's body was thin and not strong, his parents described him as reckless, stubborn, and rude. In 1833, Fyodor's father, who was religious by nature, sent him to a boarding school in France and then to the Chermit boarding school. There he was described as having a pale face, introverted and romantic. To pay school fees, his father borrowed money and expanded his private medical business. Dostoevsky felt out of place among his aristocratic schoolmates at the Moscow school. The experience was later reflected in some of his works, especially the novel The Teenager.